Hey everyone, it's Carissa. Thanks for stopping by today. Today I have some really easy card projects for you. I'm going to be using this Watercolor Wonder stamp set from altenew. It's a stamp layering stamp set, and I'm going to be using this largest flower. But I wanted to show you because on the back of this stamp set, it has a really nice key that's going to show you some key points to line up when you're layering these stamps up. And if you flip this over, I'll show you here, all of the stamps that actually go together are circled together, so you can find those little pieces easily. Now I'm also going to be using this Totally Fabulous die set with the Totally Awesome, and I actually end up pulling in the Positive Word die set as well, which are all a part of the new Essentials by Ellen release. And when I found out that they were going to be releasing that Totally Fabulous die for sale, I about screamed. It was originally a gift with purchase for the Ellen Hudson anniversary celebration, but now it is available for you to purchase, and I love it. It's fabulous. So I grabbed some of my altenew inks. These are new to me, and I am trying them out, and I really actually do like them. I am just using the little small cubes of ink, and I'm going to be using some various shades of pink, and I'm going to be doing kind of an alteration on the rock and roll stamp technique. So I'm going to be inking each of these flowers up with two different colors. For the lighter flowers, I'm starting with the frosty pink ink, and I'm inking all over the entire image, and this is the largest image. It is the solid image, and I would recommend when you're doing this to stamp the biggest image first and then work onto your layering pieces. And now I'm taking the cotton candy ink, and I have it just kind of angled here, and I'm just tapping it right around the edges. And you're going to see that as I press this down, I am going to get kind of a darker shading around the outside of this stamp. Now with the rock and roll technique, you would ink with the lighter color first, and then you would take your stamp over to the darker ink pad and kind of roll the edges in the darker ink pad. Now, because I don't have the larger ink pads and I just have these smaller cubes, this is how I'm kind of altering this technique to make it work for me. So for the darker colors, I actually realized I had a little bubble in this in this stamp here when I mounted it to my MISTI, so I'm just kind of pulling that up and getting rid of the bubble. For the darker colors, I'm going to use cotton candy for my base color, and I'm going to use the coral berry ink for my darker edges. Now you'll notice I'm using my MISTI stamping tool because I'm creating multiples of these cards, and I figured by lining this up on the MISTI tool, it's going to make that process that much easier because I can just stamp it in the same place every time. And when I go to add those layers onto each of these flowers, it's going to make it that much easier. So now I'm going to take this little piece here. It kind of looks a little weird, right? But I'm finding the landmarks on this flower, and I'm grabbing that piece here, and I'm just going to line it up with the landmarks on that large solid piece. So you can see I've kind of found the divot that is right here after those two small hills, and then the divot, and then lined up that stamp there just as it shows me on the diagram. And then I'm going to pick it up with the top of the MISTI. I'm just going to close the MISTI over it and pick up that stamp. And now I have the stamp perfectly positioned for each one of the four flowers that I'm stamping. So I don't have to reposition this every time or try to line it up every time. I am not that great at puzzles, so lining it up once is enough for me. And once again, I am just using the double inking technique. So for the darker ones, I'm using the cotton candy as my base and the coral berry around the edges. And I'm just using that kind of modified rock and roll technique. So I guess you could kind of say that instead of rocking and rolling the stamp, I'm rolling the ink pad. I don't know. So for the lighter one, once again, it was the frosty pink and the cotton candy for the darker. And like I said before, I have this all lined up so I don't have to figure this out every time. Now I'm going to add the third piece here, and I'm just lining it up once again with the landmarks that are on the flower and just using that diagram to help me line it up. And then I'm going to close the MISTI again and do all of my inking. Now you can actually stamp these in darker graduated colors. So in other words, you could stamp the base flower in a light color and then stamp each of your layers in progressively darker ink colors. But I liked the look of the same color ink on top of each other because it in itself will build up to be darker. You are not going to lose the definition of those additional layers by using the same color ink. So if you don't have a lot of different colors of ink, this is something good that you can do. You don't have to necessarily have 3 different shades of pink to do this. And I'm showing you that here. So now I'm going to add some leaves to these flowers, and I am using I believe it's the frayed leaf ink cube here from altenew, and I'm just going to stamp that on each of those flowers. And I don't know if this was actually meant to be, but I found that it lined up really perfectly on that right edge, that leaf pattern. So like I said, I don't know if it was designed that way, but I found it works really well. And then once again, for the darker color on the leaf layering, I am just going to use the same color of the frayed leaf ink and just stamp that on there. And that color is going to build up to create a darker color. Now for the middles of my flower, I am going to use Mango Smoothie and Peach Parfait, I believe it is. Be sure to check the description at YouTube below because I will have the featured products linked there, and I will have a complete list of supplies linked over at the coordinating blog post, which will be linked in the YouTube description as well. So there are coordinating dies for this Watercolor Wonder stamp set, and you could definitely do that. But I hadn't gotten them. I actually ordered them, but I hadn't gotten them by the time that I created these cards. And that's okay because I don't believe that I would have been able to cut out the leaves and the flowers all in one piece with the coordinating dies. So I'm just going to fussy cut these. And you can see that I'm just turning the paper, and then when I get a piece that's kind of big and in my way, I cut it off. But I kind of made a game of this because when I was little, my grandma used to peel oranges. The peel would stay all in one piece. She would do it with a knife. And I thought, I'm going to see if I can fussy cut this flower and leave the outside edge all in one piece, just like grandma would have done. And I was able to do it. So kind of making a little game out of it here. And now I'm using my Fiskars trimmer to cut down some card fronts. I'm cutting these down to about 3 3/4 inches. They're going to be 5 1/2 inches tall. And then I'm going to stamp part of my sentiment on this vellum. Now, part of my sentiments are going to be white heat embossed on the vellum, and I'm going to do them all at once. This is the UR stamp. This is from the Totally Awesome stamp set, and it coordinates perfectly with the Positive Word die set as well as the Totally Fabulous die set. And so I will have part of the sentiment stamped and embossed, and part of it will be the die cuts. So I've prepped the surface of the vellum with some EK Success powder tool, and now I'm stamping this along the bottom of each of these pieces of vellum in some Versamark ink, and then coating it with some superfine detail white embossing powder, and then I'll heat set all of those. Now at this point in my card creation, I wasn't quite sure exactly how I was going to cut down these vellum sentiment strips. So I was sure that I made sure that I stamped these kind of right in the middle because I didn't know if I would need more room on the left side or more room on the right side. So I allowed myself plenty of playroom so that I wouldn't have to go back and re-stamp these for any reason. And then once those cooled down, I took them over to my trimmer, I lined them up, and I just cut them down into little strips. Now, once I have that all done, I am going to bring in my Big Shot here, and you know what? I still want to call this the Big Kick. You know, back in the day, this machine was called the Big Kick, but every time I go to say it, I'm like, is it Big Shot, Big Kick? Anyway, it is Big Shot. I'm going to bring that in, and I am going to cut these intricate word dies with a little bit of gray. This is kind of a gray textured cardstock. I got it a while ago from We Are Memory Keepers. It was from their Inked Rose collection. I'm not even sure if it's still available. But I have all of those words cut out of that gray textured cardstock, and they cut beautifully. I didn't use anything but my regular cutting sandwich to cut those out. And then I kind of figured out my layout, and I took all of my sentiments over to my sewing machine and I stitched them on using a little bit of gold thread. Now I wanted to give you a little tip here. If you take and you pull your back string, my back string happens to be white and my front string is gold, it will loop up that front string behind the card front, and then you can just kind of pull it through, and that keeps you from having any loose strings on the front of my card. Now, sometimes it's fun to have the loose strings, but sometimes you just want a nice clean and simple look, which is what I was going for here. So I went ahead and pulled those strings to the back of that card front. So now that I have kind of my layout all figured out, it's time to go ahead and start the assembly process. I added the flowers onto the card fronts using a little foam adhesive, and then those little vellum strips, I actually used some clear foam adhesive to place those on. It's slightly visible, but it's not too bad. And then I wanted to add a little dimension behind the card fronts, so I just added some tape runner adhesive to the back of the card fronts and then added a layer of fun foam behind those. And then I'm going to add tape runner adhesive all over the card base. This is a top folding A2 card base, and I've put tape runner adhesive all over it, and then I'm going to attach a strip of that gray textured cardstock along the left side, and then I'm going to add my card front right on top of that. And since I have tape runner adhesive all over that card front, it's going to hold that securely. Now I decided it needed a little bit more gold, so I just took a little strip of this gold metallic cardstock from Tim Holtz, and I just added that on with a little bit of the Zig two-way glue pen. And once I got that all attached onto all the cards, I took my scissors and trimmed off the excess. Now I finished these cards off with some clear droplets from Pretty Pink Posh, and I just adhered those on using a little bit of glossy accents. And that finishes my cards for today. So like I said, these are super fun and super easy. I did a little bit of a different take on the rock and roll technique. And because I used my Misty tool, it made it really super fast and easy to make multiples of these cards and not have to line up those pieces once again. Thanks for stopping by today. I really hope you enjoyed these projects. As I mentioned before, I will have links to the featured products in the description at YouTube, and I will have a complete list of products over at my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com where you can get more information. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my card making videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.